Hello again, everybody, and welcome back to the channel. Thank you so much for joining us again today. Several years ago, I did a review on the Sig Sauer P238, this gun right here. I was really excited when I got the gun. It wasn't exactly cheap, and I loved the idea of a 1911 style 9mm with all the features and good looks that this little gun had to offer. But I had some technical issues with it and ended up being very disappointed. Years later, here we are now with the 380 version of that same gun, the P238. Is it going to put on a better showing than its 9mm brethren, or is it going to be another letdown? Well, I'm going to tell you about all that and much more in just a minute. Alright, once again, welcome back. Thanks for being with us today. If this is your first time coming to the channel, or if you've watched our videos before and just haven't had a chance to do so before now and you like our content, please consider subscribing. It's an easy thing you can do by locating the little button right in the corner of your screen there, or you can scroll down below the video and hit subscribe that way. It helps us out a whole lot and we really appreciate it. So, the P238. Like I say, had a run with the 938 and did have some technical problems here, but we're going to try to look at this as an independent item here. We're not going to flash back too much to the 938. But let's start off what we normally would. Okay, this is a 380 obviously, and so just to give you an idea about size, I'm going to do two things. Number one, I'm going to take a popular 380 pistol, which is the Glock 42, and let you see the difference in size. The Glock is actually a lot bigger. If you'll notice, if you plan on carrying either one of these, there's a significant difference in size between these guns. Now, there are some advantages and disadvantages to both. You know, the Glock's bigger grip makes it inherently a little easier to hold, especially if you have a larger hand. And even though it's a small gun, it doesn't feel as small as the 238. We'll get into more of that when we talk about the specs. But another thing I'll show you, since I mentioned the 938 as comparison, let's use it for a size comparison as well. As you can see, it is, a bit smaller than its 9mm brother. You can see a lot of striking similarities, but it's just a little bit smaller. Looking at them from the top down and from the rear, they're just almost identical. So it gives you a pretty good idea of what it's going to be like to either carry this in the holster or, even in your pocket. For me, a gun like this is almost certainly going to be a pocket gun unless I just find a really awesome holster for it. And that's one of the good things about these smaller guns is you have that option. We're going to jump right into the features here, but before we do, we're going to take just a moment to thank our friends over at Don's Weaponry for providing us this beautiful example of the P238 by Sig Sauer. Don's Weaponry is a huge supporter of firearms safety and education, and we can't thank them enough. So, of course, first things first, a little safety check. Let you see the magazine is empty, and you can look and see there is nothing in the chamber, that we are just as safe as we can be. Now, this actually brings me to my first feature I'm going to talk about. This particular gun, the only way that you can purchase the P238 new now is going to be the California compliant model, as far as I can see. I see no other offerings on SIG's site. And if something changes, of course, we'll see that. But right now, this is the only version that I see. And it has some California compliant features that are not on earlier models of the P238, and I'll talk about those. And the first one has to do with this magazine here. So it comes with a single 6-round magazine. Sig still, for what they charge, still only gives you a single magazine, and that's one of my big gripes with Sig for guns like this. That will continue to be. I mean, it really wouldn't have cost that much more, to give a second magazine, but that's just me. So, with this magazine removed, you can see the hammer is back from where I pulled the slide back during our safety check, and we know the firearm is empty. So pulling the trigger obviously is going to be of no consequence, but it's in the safe direction. When I pull the trigger, nothing happens. The safety is not on. That's because it does have a magazine disconnect on the inside, and so you cannot drop the hammer on this unless you have your magazine in, and now I can drop that hammer all day long. That's one of the California compliant features. We'll roll over to the top here, and we'll get to the other one here in a second. So you've got what they call contrast sights, which is basically just a high visibility white dot sight. I'm okay with that for a gun like this. And then right here you'll see the second part of your California compliant, and that's going to be this loaded chamber indicator. Now you've probably seen this on other guns before, and basically all that happens here is you've got this little piece of metal, and when there's actually a round in the chamber, the mass of that round is going to tip against this piece of metal that bevels right here. And when it's up, when it's showing, it's got some little orange paint on it, so you can see it quite clearly whenever it's popped up. So those are things that are part of the California compliant requirements on the gun. So you have some decent serrations here on the back. Trigger guard on this gun is pretty tiny, but it is a tiny gun, so that's okay. My 938 isn't much better, and I didn't really have an issue with that. It's just something you have to get used to. You know, it's a smaller gun, so if you're going to carry it, you got to kind of be aware that you have to know where everything is and how your hand's going to fit into it. Of course, this is your slide, stop, and release. I showed you that a little while ago. It is just on the left-hand side. And, of course, there's your hammer right there. Now, this is a 1911 style handgun, is what they call this. It's not a true 1911. The internals are not the same. It does not have a grip safety, but it is a single action only handgun, which means, of course, you got to have this hammer back. You got to manually pull that hammer back in order to fire the gun. And of course, it does have a manual safety. So if you want to carry it in a configuration like you would a 1911 in the cocked and locked position, you have that option. And some people really like these firearms because of that option. I'm not a real big fan of these grips. They're these plasticky looking things, and they just have these 3 grooves. They feel very cheap. You know, they are cheap. I definitely think it's a huge contrast from what came on my 938. You know, got the nice, really high-end wood grips on it. You know, once again, I realize that not everybody wants an expensive grip on their gun, and they're trying to keep the cost down. But you couldn't be more opposite as far as quality if you tried. Those are just, to me, really, really, really cheap. Kind of a letdown on that. As far as how they feel, that's another letdown. They're real slick. Like I say, it's just plastic with these 3 little grooves. There's no logical placement for those grooves as far as making it grippy. It's got the, you know, the texturing that's cut into the actual metal here, and the grip on both the front and a little spot here on the rear, which they do on a lot of these little guns. But the grip panels themselves are just absolutely atrocious as far as I'm concerned. So, of course, you got your magazine release right here. You know, it's a tiny gun. You don't have a lot of places you can really do much with that. I've never had a problem with the mag release on this kind of getting in my way. But that's going to be your basic overview of the features for the Sig 238. So coming into this video, I gave you a little history on the 938, and I didn't go into all the details. You can watch the videos if you really want to hear about me complaining about that gun, but basically it had problems with feeding and other things that Sig, they looked at the gun a couple times, and ultimately my problems were solved by a change of magazines, which Sig didn't catch it. That was something that I figured out on my own. And so my expectations for this little gun were not that high. But I have to say, the 238 performed much better than its 9mm brother as far as reliability. And so far, I wouldn't be afraid to carry this gun at all based on how well it performed. And the other thing is that I actually didn't have any plain FMJ. I shot all defensive rounds through this thing, and normally if I'm going to have a problem, it's going to be with a defensive round rather than just some FMJ. So I had some good old-fashioned 90 grain Hydra shocks. Shot plenty of these through it. Loves those. I have some of the Hornet V Critical Defense. This is the 90 grain. This is a pretty good round too. It seems to like that pretty well. And my best performance is out of a round I don't shoot a whole lot of. This is the Remington Ultimate Defense. This is 102 grain. And out of everything I shot, this was actually the one I was the most accurate with. And when I mention accuracy as far as when I go to the range, that's just me saying, hey, out of several magazines in no particular order, the group that ended up being the best was with a particular round. And in this case, it was that Remington Ultimate Defense. You may get different results, and of course there's dozens and dozens of other good 380 rounds out there. So, use what you like. But the gun actually is a little bit easier to shoot than its 9mm brethren. I liked this gun quite a bit. And, it's got that little small two-finger grip. It doesn't really feel like a two-finger grip whenever I'm shooting it because the way the gun is put together, the weight of it and the slide versus the weight of the frame and everything, it seems to handle the round pretty well. But I could definitely feel it in my hand a lot. Now, of course, the 380 is not going to be as potent of a round, but it also seemed, the gun is obviously scaled down a bit for the smaller round. So if all things being equal, the 238 was a lot more pleasant to shoot. It was very reliable. I didn't have any problems with feeding or anything like that. And it's very accurate. You can have some pretty impressive groups. Now, obviously, if you're trying to shoot at really great distances with a gun like this and expect a lot of accuracy, that's not going to happen. But within normal defensive distances, I think you'd be very, very pleased. So it's a very good shooting gun. It was much more reliable than its 9mm brethren, and I'm happy to say that I wouldn't be afraid to carry it. Well, speaking of carry, so what's it like to carry this? Well, to me, this fits in the category of pocket guns. I mentioned that from the beginning. If a gun gets down to a certain size, that's really about the only way I'm going to carry it. And there's a lot of guns that I carry in that way. You've heard me mention many times that I very, very commonly will carry a little airweight Smith 5-shot 38. And I've got other tiny guns I'll carry the same way because they can go right into my pocket within a small holster to still keep it safe. Now, in this case, DeSantis makes a pocket holster I really like, and I've got several of these little DeSantis gun hind here, and it has this little paddle on it. And basically what you can do is you take the gun, you drop it in, and then you can just put it in your pocket, and this little extra paddle here keeps it in upright position. Now, I wear a lot of just, dress slacks whenever I go to work, and even sometimes when I'm out. But even my jeans, my pocket's wide enough to accommodate something like this. And this will hold it in there. And if you need to draw the firearm from your pocket, it's very simple. You just grab it and pull straight up. And since this is kind of a firmer design, you can actually reholster in the pocket pretty easy if you need to. Now, I'm a really big fan of this holster for that very reason. Sometimes I'll use sticky holsters, and I know a lot of people have mixed feelings about those. They do serve a purpose. To me, that's that's a tiny, tiny gun solution. But the only problem I have with a sticky is if I withdraw from a sticky and I try to go back into it in the pocket, that's not going to happen. I actually got to take it out, put the gun inside of it, and then put it back in my pocket. So this is better if you want to be a little more discreet. The gun's extremely light. So by the time you have it in the holster and drop it in your pocket, it's a joy to carry because you don't really feel like you're carrying anything at all. I carried this thing around all week, and it was just, it's like having my wallet in my pocket or a phone or a set of keys. It's not a big deal. So extremely comfortable to carry with the right holster. There's a lot of options, but the DeSantis gun hind was the one that I enjoyed the most. So overall impressions of the P238. Well, if I'm comparing it to the 938, as I said before, as far as reliability out of the box, it did much better. I think that the 938 and full disclosure here, the 938 came in a number of different configurations, some very basic. The only main reason why I compared it as far as the grips is because it's not so much how nice these grips are, it's how ridiculously cheap these grips are. But, I digress. But from reliability standpoint, unlike the 9mm version, I had no problems with this whatsoever. It was a very good shooting, very reliable gun. Like its 9mm counterpart, you're dealing with a kind of a two-finger grip. And once again, this is a little pocket gun, so that's just kind of going to come with the territory. I think with a little bit of practice, you can be pretty comfortable shooting this little gun. For me, this is definitely going to be a one-handed shooting platform. For me, I'm not even going to try to use two hands on something like this. But I'm very comfortable with shooting this gun, and I'm pretty accurate with one hand. So I like that. I think that the safety features, I know some people, they think those are really annoying. It's not a really big deal to me. I don't mind that it won't fire with the magazine removed, that type of thing. That's not a feature that I think takes away from the gun at all. And, I like the fact that it is a 1911 style gun. Anytime I can find something like this that's reliable, and I just think they're good looking little guns. And I've mentioned many times that I really like hammer-fired guns. They are my preference. So if I could find something that's interesting, that's hammer-fired, that's reliable, I'm probably going to try to carry it. Once again, I hate the grips. Those are going to get changed. I can tell you that. Of course, this one's going to be going back to its owner, but I think I'm going to have one of my own. And when I do, I'm definitely going to order some different grips, because that's really the only thing I don't like about this gun. So, get on to one more thing that's definitely going to make some people sneer a little bit, and that's the price. And a lot of this is the product of the market that we're living in now, and prices have gone up. But when I bought this 938, which has been a number of years ago, this was about an $800 gun. But that's with the nice wood grips, that's with night sights, so it had basically the nicest configuration you could get for the gun at that time, and I think it was $770, somewhere around there. So this version here, the 238, retails for about $730. Prices vary, and that's with basic sights and super cheapo grips, and of course it's $380. I think that in this configuration, to me it's grossly overpriced. And if you're a fan of all things Sig, and you want one in your collection no matter what because it's a Sig, well, I get it. A lot of people do that. I'm kind of that way with HK as long as it's hammer fired. But for me, I think that there's a real issue with the pricing on this. I wouldn't mind paying $730 for this gun with nicer sights and nicer grips. I'll end up doing it anyway, but I think that it's a little on the high end. And most people who are shopping for a pocket gun, I think, are going to tend to agree. But having said that, it's a very nice gun. It's very well made, and with the exception of these cheapo grips, it's very good quality, and you can see that in everything they've done to it. So it's definitely a gun I would recommend. I wish Sig would step up and with a couple of things. They need to correct this problem, give you a better set of grips. And I certainly think they could spring for an extra magazine. That just annoys me every time I open one of these boxes up. But overall, I think it's a good gun, and I don't want those little things to take away from the fact that the gun is reliable, and ultimately it's about a gun that is, going to keep you safe, that's, reliable and comfortable, and, it does all of those things. So, not a bad gun for concealed carry. Alright, well that's going to do it for today. We appreciate you being with us as always. We'll be back very soon with another video for you, so until that time, everybody please stay safe and have a great day. Thank you.